Welcome back to MidPoint, and welcome back former CIA intelligence analyst Lisa Ruth, who joins us here in studio. I am fascinated always by reading stories such as this. Zacarias Musai, who is considered by many to be the 20th hijacker from 9/11, is now coming forward and is offering to give up some bits and pieces, seeing as he's never going to get out and smell free air again in his life, in order to basically get better treatment. But the one thing that he talked about was that an unnamed Saudi prince paid for the flying lessons of he and the 19 other terrorists. Okay, look, he could be completely off his whack at this point and just lying through his teeth. But the Saudis keep coming up even years later. Don't we still have to be a little bit concerned about the Saudis?
I think we do. And again, consider the source here. He is a diagnosed schizophrenic, but as you and I were joking, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't watching you. He is schizophrenic. He was interesting, if you remember, bin Laden actually released a videotape and said he has nothing to do with this. He doesn't get to take credit for it. He doesn't know anything about it. All that said, I do think you have to look at this. If you look back, the 9/11 Commission did a report. There's 28 pages that were redacted. The senators, Graham has come out and said, we've got to release these 28 pages. He says it talks about the Saudi link. You look at the finances. We know for a fact the Saudis refused to freeze bin Laden's assets when we asked them to do that. The hijackers, most of them were Saudis. There is this link here. And I think you take that, again, what we were just talking about, at your peril to ignore that. The problem we have here is, so what are you going to do about it?
We're so tied in with the Saudis, and as a matter of fact, the Saudis, they also have a policy of lopping off heads in public as part of punishment. However, when we see that happen in a country that we're friends with, no one says anything. ISIS does it, we scream and we go to war with them. I mean, I'm not trying to start a war with Saudi Arabia here, but I am trying to say that Saudi Arabia is now fearful that ISIS is going to make inroads into their country. They are asking us for more support. So at the same time, while we're always wary a little bit of Pakistan, shouldn't Saudi Arabia also be one of those countries that we're always kind of going, okay, a little bit of an arm's length?
Well, right, and as you said, if you talk to any Shiite who lives in Saudi Arabia, they'll tell you about how they're treated incredibly poorly and the treatment from Sunnis. We also know that great irony that is the Middle East. Saudi is responsible for initial funding of the groups that turned into ISIS. So, be careful what you wish for here. But again, you and I talked about this with Turkey. It seems to me when you look across the globe, in fact, U.S. allies, our definition of that and their definition of that is something very different. They're our allies when we can help them, essentially. And other than that, they're going to do what they want to do. We really don't have leverage. With Saudi, what I just said is a rhetorical question, but what are we going to do? We'll show you we're not going to take your oil. Okay? In the Middle East, we're not going to work with you, even though you're a power broker and a major player. We can't do that. We really are hamstrung in many ways, even if it turns out that they were responsible for 9/11. How far are we prepared to go? And I think what you'll see is the narrative of, well, it wasn't the government, it was this rogue prince, it was something outside, because we can't afford to alienate them.
All right, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that we are not sitting here saying that Zacarias Musai is positive and needs to be believed. Please,
right.
let's not start one of those truther arguments here. It's all just worth bringing up again, the Saudi connection. 90 seconds here at the Jerusalem synagogue. 6 people are attacked, 4 people are killed, rabbis are killed. 3 of them have American connections, dual Israeli-U.S. nationals. Should we take anything from this as the beginning of a new phase of the war from Hamas?
Unfortunately, I think what this is not a new phase, but the same phase. And I think this really highlights that, yes, the war this summer ended.
Quote unquote.
Was put on pause. The fighting actually stopped. It has not ended. You have, the tensions are so incredibly high. It's that old analogy. You've got this ship out in the middle of the ocean with gasoline poured all over the deck. What is it going to take to light that match? And the tensions continue. You've got today Palestinians celebrating in the streets over this. You've got, incredible just disbelief in Jerusalem. The tensions are still there. There has been no progress despite the end of the fighting this summer.
Fair to say that a lot of people are always going to look at the Palestinians and they're going to say, unless we see some sort of real effort publicly, we see the dancing and celebrating, it's not going to change a lot of minds as to, in their minds at least, who the real terrorists are.
Absolutely. Until you have leadership in, I hate to say it, Hamas, that's going to say we're changing, and we don't see that. Instead, we see the opposite. We see this stoking of resentment and fighting, and it's not going to go away.
More military coming from Israel, you believe? They're going to tear down the houses of those who were involved, but even more incursions?
Well, because probably what's going to happen is Hamas is going to launch rockets, and then Israel has to retaliate.
Back at war. Here we go. Lisa, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Look forward to talking to you again next week.
It's good to be here.
Let's get some good news one of these days. All right, break and we return with the possibility one group of people who are seeking to make real and positive changes here in America just might be able to do the same thing in North Korea. And at 34 minutes after the hour, around the dial with Lars Larson on amnesty, Ferguson, and a whole lot more, because we're still waiting to hear what will come out of the grand jury in Ferguson, Missouri. That's all coming up right here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.